at some point when we don't have the turn on and sexual desire that we want, I think we naturally start to question, is something going on with us physically? Like, is there something wrong with me? Are my hormones affecting this? Is my health in general affecting this? So clients are constantly talking to me about whether it's vaginal dryness, recurring yeast infections, hysterectomy, hormone issues, skin issues, you name it, around issues that are affecting their confidence, their sex drive, and their relationship. So this show is the Rated R Love Show, and in this we untangle sexuality and turn on for women so that they can find their voice and really help their relationship to move in the direction of intimacy and connection that they desire. And I'm your host, Janelle Fraser. The woman that I have the pleasure of introducing you to has over 15 years of experience in the health industry. She is my most trusted advisor for all things health. She specializes with women specifically on their hormones, their health, and stress. What I particularly like about her approach is that she approaches the issues of her clients from many angles. So nutrition and supplementation, yoga and movement, acupuncture, detox, and mindset and the emotion side of all of this. So I love the well-rounded approach. This guest happens to also be my best friend and my sister. She's 10 years older. I'm just going to tell you that now because sometimes people think that
we're twins.
And we're not. So I have the pleasure of introducing you to Miss Melissa Fraser. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Okay, so I mean, we've had so many conversations over the years, just like around the kitchen table, about all of the issues that you guys deal with and that I've dealt with and some that you've dealt with around sexuality and relationships. So give it to us. Tell me even what I need to do. Like, what do women need to know about, like, turn on and when it comes to health?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind where I see a lot of the underlying issues that we're struggling with are some sort of hormonal imbalance. And so one of the main things to consider when it comes to hormonal imbalance is that if your insulin is imbalanced, so if you're, say, eating a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet and, every couple of hours you're eating, spiking your blood sugar, the body's producing insulin, that's creating a sort of a roller coaster response in the body. And if the blood sugar is a roller coaster, the rest of the hormones are going to do the same. So your blood sugar is almost like the guide for the rest of the hormones. If that's all over the place, that's going to send everything else all over the place. So that's kind of foundational.
Okay. So just so you guys can be clear, what I'm hearing is that, like, and you often hear women too talk about, like, there's the roller coaster they feel inside of themselves. It's like you're almost describing what women describe to me that they feel, like, emotionally and mentally. So would you say, like, that's even playing in?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And,
like, women can feel that in their body?
Oh, yeah. You feel like, for the most part, on a day-to-day, what you're feeling the roller coaster of would be, say you wake up in the morning and you have breakfast and you have a bowl of cereal or low-fat yogurt and fruit or a piece of toast and maybe a coffee with that. So right away in the morning you have this spike of blood sugar. Your body's like, oh, okay, spiked with that. Add some coffee in there. That's just adding fuel to the fire. And then, by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, your blood sugar dips. You need either a snack or your next meal or whatever to pump that blood sugar back up again. And so most of us are riding that roller coaster throughout the day of our blood sugar up and down, up and down. But then that ripples effect, days turn into weeks turn into months. And like I said, if our blood sugar is up and down like that all the time, it also has that influence on our hormones. And
so what do hormones then, like, okay, so my insulin's doing this, I see the connection, and I think you guys are seeing the connection between your food and how your insulin is flowing, and then that's making our hormones, is following that up and down path. So what does that have to do with our turn on or our sexuality?
Well, if our hormones aren't in their natural rhythms or aren't if we don't have them in the right levels or the right amounts, That's what controls everything in our body, including including our turn on, including, how we're feeling about our partner, how we're feeling about ourselves.
Right.
So, and another influence here is when our blood sugars are up and down. This is a form of stress.
Okay.
So this is a form of stress on, we're not, sometimes when we think of stress, like, oh, I'm under a lot of stress. We think, oh, I have a lot on my to-do list at work, or I have a lot of, I've been fighting with my partner, some of those things we might think of. But we don't often think of the hormonal ups and downs as
like the physical stress.
Yeah. Blood sugar imbalance is a huge stress on the body. It taxes our body in numerous different ways. But also the stress from like being under fluorescent lights at work all day, like stress in all kinds of not getting enough sleep, stress in getting too much exercise or not enough exercise. Like there's so many factors that are related to our stress load and our resilience or lack thereof. So,
so how do we know if there's something physically going on? Like, how do we know if our hormones are off?
Usually you just feel off, or you feel like, you mentioned the roller coaster that women feel like they're on. You are. That is a hormonal roller coaster. And we tend to know. We might not know what it is. We just know that something is off. We know that I don't feel right.
Right.
And you might even go to your doctor and they'll test maybe a couple of different hormones, maybe estrogen, testosterone, maybe progesterone. They might say, oh, you're within the normal limits. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's your optimum limit or your optimum place that those hormone numbers should be.
Right.
And I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I can definitely get them for people. Like, the ideal ranges. You can even look them up online. But even within those ideal ranges, there's a lot of wiggle room. And you might fall in that range, but you might be at the low end of that range, and that might just not be optimal for you. Right. So, blood tests are a decent way to have a base mark, but they're not the end all be all. So just because you got your test results back from your doctor and they said, oh, everything's fine, everything's within normal ranges, don't necessarily rule out the fact that you might have some hormonal imbalance going on. And there are some other tests, like the Dutch hormone test that's really great. It's a urine test, a dried urine test that is a little more in-depth. You have to pay for it out of pocket. Of course, then you can't get it done at your regular doctor, but a naturopath or someone can do that for you, or I can do that for people as well.
So something else that you're going to see if you're on Melissa's social media is like there's the element, like you talk about foods, there's that kind of earthy element I mentioned, but I find there's often like the yoga, there's a lot of self-care energy in what you're doing, and like de-stressing. So I'm assuming like that has a role.
Yeah.
How does it play in?
When we're under a lot of stress, our body's producing more stress hormones. So like cortisol and adrenaline and that sort of thing. And when those are high, it literally depresses our sex hormones, the hormones that make us like sexy and juicy and womanly. Okay,
I feel like this is important. Can you say that again? So when we're stressed,
when our body's producing a lot of the stress hormones, like the go, busy, doing everything for everyone, super mom, super woman, our body is producing a lot of this, producing those people, us, when we're in that state, when you're doing everything for everyone and you're like, being a mom and running a business or working 9 to 5 or whatever, and then you're running your kids all over the place and you're making meals and you're meal prepping and you're exercising, and like your body is in this in this heightened state, like your fight or flight is just like turned on, and your body's producing a lot of hormones, but they're not the hormones, they're not your sexy hormones, they're the opposite of your sexy hormones. They're hormones that actually suppress your sexiness. They make you far less sexy. They make you a ball of stress. They make you tense. They make you they make you mentally tense. They make you physically tense. They make your vagina tense, so you don't want to be penetrated. Like you can't even, when you're in that state, you're like, I can't even think about sex right now. Like I have so much else going on. That is not a sexy state.
Okay, every woman I've ever talked to says, I can't even think about sex right now. Like, they're, because they are trying to do everything. Like, they are super people. They're like overachievers. They're like incredible women who are like moving missions forward. But then there's like, I get home and I'm just like, I got nothing for my partner. So what I'm hearing, that this is like a different angle that maybe you guys haven't really heard before. It's not necessarily just about being busy and prioritizing more time. It's that like what's running through your body, the hormones, all that cortisol and stress hormones, is actually like taking away the possibility.
Yeah, it physically suppresses your sexy hormones, your juicy hormones, the ones that literally make you want to be sexy and feel sexy. And
let's flip it. How do we flip it?
So food is definitely a big thing, like eating in a way that's nourishing for our body. We can go a little more in depth into that, but I'll give you a few things first, because it's not just about food, just because you start eating healthy, but if you keep living that crazy lifestyle, you're not going to be much further ahead.
Give us like some big picture items, and then if people want the more details,
we can dive into
they need
that.
to work
So first you need to plug the holes. Like stop bailing water, stop trying to put fires out, and just like get rid of a few things off your plate. Like where can you start saying no to things? Do your kids need to be in like 4 different sports and groups each? Where can you simplify? Where can you simplify? What can you get rid of that's really not necessary for starters? Do you need to plan the best birthday party and make all of these everything homemade and homemade decorations or whatever you're
at the
burning yourself
detriment
out
to these other things you say you want, positive relationship.
So start with that. Look at your life and okay, where can I cut some corners here, or what can I just get rid of? Because most people are just piling on too much, and most of it's things you don't want to do anyways.
Marie Kondo your life.
Yeah.
What does not bring me joy?
Yes, absolutely.
Get rid of it.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Yeah. Hashtag that. And then looking at okay, what am I'm going to use diet as a term for everything you're taking in, including caffeine, including kind of even want to include anything you're consuming, even if you're smoking marijuana, if you take energy drinks, alcohol, medications, we'll leave that for now.
Okay.
Just because some people, there's a lot of work. And if someone wants to get off of a medication, it's not just about taking that away.
Right.
There needs to be a lot of groundwork to do before someone can think about taking that away. That might be what's holding them up right now.
Right.
And if you take that away, their whole world might fall down.
Okay.
So that's never a first step. That's long-term vision. But looking at everything you're taking in, everything you're consuming, and what effect it has. So I see a lot of women relying on coffee, multiple cups throughout the day. And they'll be well, I only drink 2 cups, but then they show me their cups, and their cups a large Tim's, which is 3 or 4 cups. When I just have 2 of those a day. Just getting really serious about how much coffee you're consuming. And if you're already, that again puts you in that fight or flight state. Maybe 1 cup is okay for you, but maybe 6 cups is not. And so looking at
6 cups is just definitely not.
Yeah.
Ever. Okay.
And then looking at the next step would be looking at where we started. So we talked about the blood sugar roller coaster. Yeah. Start to balance that out. So you want an even keel in your think if you're eating a high carb, especially refined carbohydrates, and a high sugar diet. So if you're starting your morning with low fat yogurt and berries, and then you're having a sandwich for lunch, and you're having some pasta for supper, and probably some snacks in there that are also high carb throughout the day, your blood sugar is on this roller coaster. And it's basically you're trying to fuel your body with, it's if you think of your body as a house, and it would be you're trying to heat your house with kindling. So if anyone's ever lit a fire, kindling burns really fast. So you have to sit in front of that fire all day, feeding it. And that's what people do to themselves.
Right.
They go to work and they got meal prep, and they've got 3 snacks and 2 or 3 meals with them, and all these little meals, and they're trying to keep their blood sugar up all day. Instead of doing that, is get off that roller coaster, and start with something that's going to give you a long sustained burn. Put a log on that fire so it's going to burn for a few hours.
So what things burn longer?
Fats and proteins.
Okay.
So, for breakfast, for instance, like make a frittata or some eggs.
Okay, this is my in, because I didn't know if I was going to bring it up, but if it came up, I was going to bring it up, because so we hear a lot of debate and conversation right now around eating meat, not eating meat, being vegan, and so when you follow Melissa, it's gonna be very obvious to you that she is not pro-vegan, pro-meat,
not plant-based.
She's not plant-based, and so I think that is an important conversation, because so if what we're consuming is making such a big difference, so it's like and we want this log that's going to burn long inside of us to help us create that stability. Like, all that makes sense. I think it does to everyone watching. So let's talk about, why meat over other things, or why animal products.
Yeah. The simplest answer is just the nutrient density. So animal products, and I encourage people not to just eat meat, definitely not just like lean meat. You want the fattier cuts. You want all sorts of cuts, all sorts of animals, organ meats, getting back to what you might refer to as like an ancestral way of eating. Mm-hmm. Maybe not your direct ancestors, because, your parents might have fed you the same thing that you're eating now and feeding your kids, but like further back beyond that. Mm-hmm. So when even like, not going way back to like hunter-gatherers even, but just going back to like early days of farming, when an animal was harvested, like that animal would be used in its entirety. Mm-hmm. Like you would make bone broths, and even just like a generation ago, if you made people weren't cooking chicken breast, they were cooking a chicken, and when you ate that chicken, you would boil the bones and make a soup, and make a stock from the bones, and then turn that into a soup, or freeze it to use for other sauces or whatever. Just getting back to those kinds of foods. Mm-hmm. And away from the quick fixes as much as possible, because it's not going to get you anywhere in the long run. And like I said, the animal foods are just far superior when it comes to nutrient density. And like traditional societies years ago, if a woman and a man, when they were getting ready to have a baby, they would feed these people for 3 months, 6 months, sometimes up to a year, with lots of organ meats, like lots of egg yolks, and really rich foods like fish eggs, and just foods that are like very nutrient dense.
Thinking of what we bring now to people who have just had babies or are celebrating good times in their life. We bring like the worst possible.
Garbage, like high sugar, high processed, refined stuff, like nutrient void completely. The opposite of nutrient dense.
Lasagna and pie.
And looking at and it's not that plants are inherently bad. This could literally be an entire episode on its own. So, but just if you remember, one thing is like the nutrient density. Can you get enough protein on a plant-based diet? Some people possibly can, but you need to really work at it. Mm-hmm. I just see a lot of people doing really well initially on a plant-based diet. Some people for a few weeks or months, some people for a few years, but then I see it almost unanimously across the board. Like, just they start to get run down, their teeth get brittle, their hair gets weak, they start to have skin issues, like all kinds of stuff. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, like definitely just start following me, because I talk about that a lot. I talk about different things related to that. So, or if someone has some like specific concerns, by all means they can reach out. But I think that gives them an idea. That's the most important reason. So we eat food because we need building blocks. I know that's not why the way most of us choose our foods. Like, most of us choose our foods based on what tastes good, what's going to fill us up, what's fast. It's a social thing. It's there's a million other reasons why we choose what we choose to eat, other than like what's going to give us the best fuel and what's going to give us the best building blocks. Right. But that physiologically are the reasons why we need food, and we actually do not have a daily recommended intake or necessary intake of carbohydrates, but we have very clear necessary needs for protein and fats because they build our neurotransmitters, they build our hormones. So it's vital to our cognitive health, our hormonal health, our sex life, all of it.
The big thing that's standing out to me around the whole sort of understanding this is I just keep picturing the log analogy. I think it just like helps people for like to make sense. It's like it's the slow burn so that we're not riding that hormonal roller coaster.
Come off that roller coaster.
Perfect. Okay, these conversations are just the beginning, and they are a really great starting place, but if you want more tools, more action, more like specific things, and the accountability to implement them into your life, your sexuality, and your relationship, you've got to join the Rated R Love Club. On top of the challenges and action-based activity, what you're also going to get is coaching from me every single month, anonymous coaching from me, as well as behind the scenes where I share with you a little bit more in depth my process, like what's going on in my sexuality, my relationships, the things I'm not telling anybody else, things I might have only told her. So I will share those.
I'll never tell.
I'll share those with you inside of the community. And then you have the community as well. It's a completely private, anonymous community. If you don't want to be known, you do not have to be known. And if you want to participate, you can. So you cannot get in right now. The doors are closed and I only open a few times a year. So go to the link in the comments below, in the description below, and get on the wait list. I only open the door a couple times a year and it's only for a hot minute. So you've got to get in while it's open because for the most part it's closed so I can just stay in supporting our members. But that's really the place to be if you want more. That is called the Rated R Love Club and you can go into the show notes to grab the link. Okay, so I want to jump back into the tangible. So you said the decluttering of the life, do I've got to do all these things? What can I let go of? The hashtag Recondo method. The overview of the diet, getting things into our diet, stop the roller coaster, more long, slow burn. That even sounds sensual, like even
long, slow.
But that just sounds like delicious. Okay, so we want that. That's what we're all looking for here.
Yeah.
So what else? What are some other tangibles?
Get into your body, get out of your head and get into your body. So
wow.
we 90% of us, we just spend so much time thinking, planning, organizing, doing, and not just like feeling and being. And so that looks different for everyone, but it can be as simple as just go outside for a walk. And that has such a ripple effect, just the fresh air, the sunshine, all of it, but just to get moving, get your blood pumping, that's going to get your blood flowing too.
Dare I say without a podcast? Because I don't know if you notice this, but sometimes I'll okay, I'm going to go for a walk to get in my body. But then I'm still thinking and planning because I'm listening to something that's making me back in my head.
Yeah.
It's do you notice that?
Yeah, I'm bad for that too because I love podcasts.
Yeah.
Or listen to a podcast that you're not learning something. I really like true crime podcasts.
Ooh, right.
So listen to an entertainment podcast as opposed to okay, I'm going to learn something on this podcast.
I have to grow.
Yeah. Just stop the growth for a minute and let yourself be, go for a walk. But if, it can be as simple as going for a walk, but if you like to dance, put on some music and dance. That really helps you get away from the thinking.
Do you have any weird or unconventional or sort of secret things besides obviously the really good things of moving our bodies and going for a walk that helps you to get out of your head and into your body? Any practices or?
Well, I love magic mushrooms, but A, I don't know that they're legal, and B, that's maybe not something that everyone will gravitate towards or can get a hold of, so that would be once in a while, but not something I would advocate for every day. But I do hear the whole microdosing thing is a thing,
right?
On a daily basis.
I don't know that world, but I've heard
Silicon
of it.
Valley, microdosing on LSD and psilocybin mushrooms, and they're actually legal in Colorado now.
Okay.
Anyways, so other than that, for me, I really like bed yoga. So I like to do kind of a yin or restorative type yoga practice, but in bed because.
Right.
Why do it on the floor when I have a king-size bed with a,
sprawl
pillow top and all kinds of pillows around to use for props? And so I do a legs up the wall practice, and I do that almost every day.
Yeah.
Ideally, I like starting my mornings with that, but it just doesn't happen a lot these days because I have really early mornings, so I usually end up finishing my day with it. And especially if you have a busy day, and you live a high stress life or just a busy life, it can be a great way to let go of your day and like just unwind, get into your body, focus on breathing into the tight spots, and a really great way to wind down, especially if anyone's having trouble sleeping or having trouble falling asleep at night. And I encourage you to go to bed earlier. Or not just to do that, but go to bed even earlier. Like, no one is going to bed early enough. Like, I don't know anyone that's going to bed early enough. And especially as we move we're moving in here in the northern hemisphere, we're moving into fall and winter, which is getting darker and darker by the day. So like we had talked about, we are not connected to our environment. We are nature. So living as much as you can in line with nature's cycle. So as the days get shorter, let your days get shorter, your work days, your sleep days longer. Someone, I don't remember who this came from, but someone just told me this weekend. It was like, to get yourself into like the most balanced health, sleep was number one. Like before diet, anything, like get your sleep dialed in. And I have what I call like build your sleep sanctuary. And that's like, like just make your sleep, take out the TV, get rid of all the electronics from your bedroom, like get really nice bedding, like make your sleep sanctuary. I'll actually give you a copy of the sleep sanctuary that you can send to your community, and they can help start to work on setting up their own sleep sanctuary, because it really does help to let go of the day. And sleep is the number one before nutrition. There was 3 things. I can't remember what the third thing was. Movement, sleep, then nutrition, then movement. Like one of my clients who has a lot going on, cancer, or pacemaker, like all kinds of stuff, on multiple different chemo drugs and steroids, and was in a pretty rough state. Like she just was like, I can't move, I can't exercise. Like the doctor said I can't lose this weight anyways because I'm taking these steroids. So her and I have been working together for about 2 months now. She's lost 30 pounds.
Whoa.
And
she's not moving.
And now, she just started, like in the last few weeks, she just naturally wanted to move. It wasn't like I have to, or I should, or Melissa wants me to. I started her out with the bed yoga, a couple times a week, bed yoga. Next thing I know, within a couple of weeks, she's walking the bridges. And she's like, this would not have happened the way I was feeling 2 months ago. Like I just could not move, and I just had no desire, and my body hurt, and everything hurt, and I had zero energy. And
so something I love about this, I didn't know this was going to come up because I didn't know you had that story, but I just like sent like shivers into my spine when you said like my body just wanted to. So when it comes to our turn on and our sexuality, I think so many of us feel like we need to force it, and it's like my body just doesn't want to do it. And what I've experienced, and what I'm even hearing from in many different ways, is like our body will gift us with turn on, with pleasure, with health, with the desire to do more healthy things when we are taking care of her. And it's like that's pretty crazy.
Our body says no in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is shutting down the turn on. That's like
I saw that on your website or somewhere. It was like basically like, what was the actual quote? Like, if we don't say no for our bodies will eventually say no for us. And so
through some sort of illness or condition or disease. But even just before something turns into a disease, you just won't feel turned on. Like that's like an early imbalance. You won't feel like you want to have sex. Like your body's just like, no, because physiologically and evolutionarily, sex is to procreate. And if you are just like super stressed and wired, and your body's like, we can't do that right now. We can't procreate.
We're in like fight or flight mode.
There's way too much shit going on. Like we're not having any babies. So,
So, okay. I think like a couple things that I often say is like that this is a journey. The transformation that you want to see in your relationship and your sexuality, like even as we're learning from you, it's like, whoa, there's a lot of things that we could change. And like, so one that I want you guys to hear is like, there is a journey. Everything that she's said can't necessarily all be changed or implemented tomorrow, because like you've got other things to do. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's overwhelming a little bit in the beginning because this is one element of what can affect our turn on. So if someone is likely a little bit overwhelmed when they hear like, okay, like I need to sort of declutter my life. I need to change my diet. There's so much. Like, what do we do with that overwhelm? What do we do when we just kind of like, these are where do we start?
Yeah.
But there's also so much.
There's also so much to start with. I would say to start from what I do in some of my detoxes and things is like one, or in a lot of different programs that I run, we start with 1 week is one of those things. You know, like the first week is all about looking at your life.
Mm-hmm.
So take a week and, you know, maybe the first day you write some things down. You write everything you got to do in a day down, and then you start to figure out like what can go.
Yeah.
Start to write down. Then the next day you write down what's really important to you.
Right.
You know, there's space it out so like 1 week is dedicated to each of those things. Week 2, then look at, okay, what changes can I make in my diet? What can I and even with diet, like diet can be really big to start tackling, but maybe you just start with your first meal of the day, and like how can you change your first meal of the day to set you off on a more balanced track to get you off that roller coaster. Because if we start the morning with sugar, you're going to want it again throughout the day. Like once you get a taste for it, it's super addictive. Physiologically, mentally, emotionally, like it is really addictive. And so as soon as we get a taste for it in the morning, like your body's going to crave it, and it's going to be hard to come off that roller coaster later in the day. So
it's kind of how to like focus on like
start on one meal at a time. Like how can I, even if you start off with just eating the same thing for breakfast every day for like a month, just to get you on a more balanced path. And it can take months. Like you know, it can really take like at least a couple of cycles for people to start to feel more balanced. You'll feel better in different ways, but the thing, like when it's hormonally rooted, it sometimes will take a couple of cycles. Like for instance,
you mean
if
like menstrual cycles?
Yes, a couple of menstrual cycles. Like we are nature.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, we are nature, and our cycles follow the moon, and you know. Anyways, so it could take, like, if say for instance someone was coming to me and wanted help coming off birth control. They've been on birth control for 10 years, and they were thinking of having a baby in a few years, but they went on birth control originally, maybe not even because they were having intercourse, but because they had really heavy periods and acne and super moody around their periods, like any kind of symptoms. So the doctor was like, oh, go on this. And their symptoms have been better. So they're really scared, like, oh, I'm going to go off this and all of these things are going to come back. And rightly so, like that concern is very real. They probably will. But this, you know, if someone is wanting is like thinking about fertility wise and planning on having a baby, ideally you come off the pill like now. Even if you're thinking about 2 years from now, like look at some alternative methods for birth control, start paying attention to your fertility. Like it's going to make things a lot easier down the road. But when someone is coming to see me for something like that, I usually suggest working together for like 3 months before they even think of coming off the pill. Well, and that's going to make your cycles, get them, hopefully they're going to be more in line before you even come off. Because one thing that happens too for people is like they come off the pill and then they bleed for a month straight, or they come off the pill and they don't get a period for like months, or like, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So the more balanced you can get your system before you try to do something like that, the better. And so even if you're not coming off the pill, but you're just hoping to see results in your hormone system, it can take a few months to really notice those benefits. Like if you're patience. Yeah. Well, patience and consistency. Right. Not just patience, like waiting around. Like it makes me think of that meme. Have you saw you've probably seen this meme of they're talking about going to the gym. This guy bought a gym membership and he's like, I bought a gym membership 3 months ago and I haven't noticed any difference. And then it says at the bottom, I think tomorrow I'm actually going to go in there and see what's going on. You know, so consistency. You can't just wait around, but like consistently doing these things. Like it's not going to be like, well, I tried that for a week. I tried this for a week and didn't work. Like
heck, a week. Honestly, I feel like people last like a day or half a day.
Oh yeah, no, I had a conversation a few days ago with a woman, and she's like, she's like, I made it to lunch and then I was into the cupcakes that I had in the freezer. Like, yeah. So.
So it's funny that you brought up like baby making, because one of the things before we conceived Lenny, it's like one of my biggest fears was creating my daughter. I always felt like I knew I was gonna have a daughter. So creating our first child or any child, not desiring the sex that I was having, like that felt like my biggest fear, like to bring this beautiful life in, but have that as the energy of conceiving. And so what I am noticing though is that the lack of sexual desire that is so prevalent and common isn't seeming to alter the desire to have kids. Like people are still wanting babies, but they're not enjoying that sex, or like they're still not turned on, but they want babies. Yeah. And I just feel like
they're typically far less turned on if they're trying to have a baby,
right? Because
it becomes very stressful and all encompassing.
Yeah. And so I just find that an interesting dynamic. But I think there's so many factors that, when it comes to our health, about what can impact our desire to have sex, not just our actual turn on, because what I've also noticed within myself and other people is that sometimes there is the desire, but there's something going on physically that's either like taking their confidence away, whether it's like smell that that their body's emitting, or it could be like reoccurring yeast infections. So it's actually like, for me, it was often like my vagina was always sore after we would have sex. But I had once, through learning from you, overgrowth of yeast that was happening that wasn't obvious. I didn't have like an obvious yeast infection, but it was almost like a lingering mini yeast infection at all times.
Yeah, like a low grade yeast infection. Yeah.
And so I feel like there's things like that are happening for many women, that they're either not communicating that to their partners, so they're not confident about it, it's taking their confidence. So they do have the desire in terms of to be intimate and connected, but it's like that's making them, kind of pull away.
Yeah. And again, that's really like ideally a systemic approach. Like you can,
what do you mean by systemic?
Systemic or holistic, like it's showing that your body is out of balance when that's happening. There's a hormonal component for sure, but also you're probably eating things that are activating or aggravating extra yeast, or feeding the yeast in your body. So, or there's an immune something, like maybe there's something going on with your immune system that for whatever reason your immune system isn't taking care of this yeast problem, or there's a bacterial problem that the body's just not able to keep up on for whatever reason. The immune system is maybe overburdened. There could be multiple different reasons why it's happening, and so it has to be looked at from a few different ways. But definitely looking at one of the biggest things, especially with either whether you're having reoccurring yeast infections, even if it seems low grade, or like hormonal. Lots of times they're related to certain times of your cycle, or if you're having bacterial vaginosis, anything like that. Your body, if you're feeding it things that is making your body more prone to be, or like basically like feeding, you're not just feeding your body, but you're feeding the yeast. Right. Okay. If you're putting it in your body, you're feeding them too. And what they like to eat is sugar and anything that you don't digest well. So if you're eating things that you're just like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Like I always feel bloated after, or it bothers my stomach or whatever. So if there's any kind of undigested food that your body's like not digesting well, the yeasts and funguses and bacteria will feed on that. But they also love sugar. Like sugar is just a really easy fuel source for them, and it just makes them makes their populations explode. Right. So first of all, stopping that, and then there's lots of things that you can take that could help to kill the yeast and the fungus. Take both internally, orally, and vaginally.
But like if someone went to their doctor about a yeast infection, I know, like, in my experience, like, even for years, if I would, like, go have a pap test, I'd be like, maybe a little, like, low grade, no big deal, like, or I could give you something to, like, clear that up. And because I knew you, thankfully, I didn't take any antibiotics that was going to, really make that a long-term issue for me. So what's kind of, like, the difference, I'll say, between, like, what people are going to get from their doctors if I got a yeast infection, so I'm going to go to my doctor. Like, I know people who go to their doctor multiple times a year for a yeast infection.
Oh, yeah. Some people, like, almost monthly. It can be really chronic. So, the approach that I'm speaking of is is getting to the root of the cause, like getting to the root, or there might be multiple roots, but
Right.
getting, digging deeper and figuring out like, why is this happening in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I take out those things that are causing this to happen?
Yeah.
And getting the sugar out is going to help you get off that hormonal roller coaster too. Like,
Right.
it all feeds into benefiting you on many levels. So it's what I call a holistic or a systemic approach, because we're looking at the root, we're looking for the roots,
Right.
and we're looking to, dig deeper into what's causing these things.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening? That's really the only way you can stop something.
Right.
It's not, everything else is basically just a Band-Aid.
Well, I think
And sometimes you need some Band-Aids, while the wounds are healing, basically.
Right, for sure.
Sometimes you gotta just you need something to pacify things, hold things together while you're dealing with the more systemic causes. But
Okay. So I think in general, I think sometimes we think oh, I want the one thing that's going to help me with my particular symptom. But what I'm sort of taking away from this conversation, I think you guys can take away, is that no matter what you're experiencing when it comes to your health, it's it all works together. Heck, you're talking about how the weather, and the moon and all these cycles are also affecting us. Your whole life, your existence is all working together. So it's all the things you've suggested, no matter what you're experiencing, it may not be all of what you need to do, but is cutting out sugar, is getting off the insulin roller coaster. All of these things are going to help. That's kind of what I'm getting, no matter what.
Yes.
It's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there might be maybe
it's
subtle
a lifestyle.
Things.
It's not a quick fix. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not do this for 3 months and then go back to your old lifestyle.
Right.
Because you go back to your old lifestyle and all of the same things that you had before are going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my business is called Melissa Fraser Lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It has to be a lifestyle shift.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be moving into a new way of life for you.
And I think even just having, because our sex drive and our turn on and our relationship dynamics change so much over time, from health issues and babies and job and stress and all the things that a relationship is going to go through over time. I think that it has to be a lifestyle, and you're playing a long-term game of having epic intimacy and sex and relationship and yumminess in your body and health over time. This is a long this is the long game that I'm wanting for you guys and for us.
Yeah.
So, okay, how does someone know if they can do this on their own or if they need professional help?
Well, I think everyone can do it on their own, because you live in your body. Mm-hmm. You're the only one that lives in your body. You are the only one who really knows what's actually going on. And we want to give that power away so often, and we want someone else to fix us. We want someone else to do the work for us. We want to give that ownership away. We don't want to take ownership of the fact that we've created this. It's oh, well, there's something wrong. Yeah, there's something wrong for a lot of reasons.
So you fix me.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact of the matter is, I can't fix you. Mm-hmm. Your doctor can't fix you. Mm-hmm. Your massage therapist can't fix you. Mm-hmm. Your physio can't fix you. They see you 1 hour a week max, maybe 1 hour a month. Yeah. Maybe every 6 months. Your doctor, you see them for 10 minutes here and there. They can't fix you. Mm-hmm. You are the only one that has that power. And the sooner that you take back that power and recognize everything that you do matters. Yeah. In regards to how you feed yourself, in regards to how you move, how you sleep, your whole lifestyle, you are building your health or building your sickness. Yeah. And just take back that power, own that. Everything you do is going to make a difference. And even if, yes, maybe there is something maybe you've got endometriosis and you've had it for 20 years, all of these things are still going to help. Mm-hmm. Beyond. I just can't tell you, and because you work with similar people that I do, just on kind of the different side of it, they come with their issues in the health, and it's well, I'm just never going to have the sex life or the relationship, or I'm never going to be turned on, or I'm never going to have that thing that I want because this situation is happening, whether it's endometriosis or some illness or something that was diagnosed, and it's or I had this trauma during childbirth and my labia is ripped in half. I actually had someone tell me that the other day.
Right, so like shit happens, and what I'm loving what you're saying, and just want to like echo that, so like you hear it 300 times, is like you're in control and you get to rewrite that story.
Yeah.
Would you say our health is like we can bounce back? We can
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's the word? Like resilient.
Resilience.
We are resilient.
I love that word, and we can build resilience.
Yeah.
So you might feel like you're in a state right now that's really like broken down and fragile, and you can't handle anything else, and you're just like, borderline walking the edge of like, falling off the edge basically, into some kind of depressive episode, or like God knows what's going on. Mental breakdown is what they used to call it years ago. Like, oh, she's having a mental breakdown. But maybe you feel like you're right there and you just like can't handle one more thing. But the more you start to change your lifestyle and change the factors around you that are pushing you into that state will change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that even in my own body on a daily basis. It's like, I can feel like on top of the world when I've got all the elements in place, and then it's like one day my sleep is off, and then that makes my food off, and that like the ripple effect of how it's all connected.
Absolutely.
So in your website, you said something to the effect of like that the health is the center of the wheel of life, of all the areas of life, but like health is like the center. And I thought that was so important, and I agree. So why is it the center?
Well, I love that analogy of the wheel, and the wheel of life, and most people have heard of that. And there's family and career and personal life and sexuality, relationships, like all of those things. But if your health isn't dialed in, if you're feeling like crap, all of those things are either not going to matter, or everything's going to be more of a struggle, or out of whack all over the place. Everything's going to be harder.
Yeah.
Feel harder, feel more of a grind. So when you get your health dialed in, all of those things naturally become filled with more ease and grace and joy. And I'm not saying that your whole life will just naturally, like you're going to win the lottery and you're never going to have to work again, and your husband's going to rub your feet every night. Like, not necessarily, but maybe. But yeah, you get your health, we're the only ones who are going to take care of. I'm the only one that's going to take care of me.
Yeah.
You're the only one that's going to take care of you.
Okay, so our dad always says, he has this famous saying. What does he always say?
Take care of number one. And then, who's number one?
Yeah, he always like gets the finger in your face.
It makes you say,
like, I'm number one. Yeah, totally, he does. And you know what? That a lesson I feel like has just been like such a foundation for both of us in our life. Of like, it's true. At the end of the day, like you look after you, even in your relationship. It's like you've got to look after your side of this and your turn on. And to me, turn on is like another word to describe it is energy, is vitality, is health. And I think that's when I started to adopt it. It almost took the pressure off of like, because some people that watch this, like they're resistant to even being turned on because they think that it means they have to do something.
I like
with
the
their
word
partner.
juicy.
Yeah, it's like just
juicy. Just feel like
feeling good in your body.
And you're just like, you just want to like, those days when you're just like, oh, I just love how I feel, and I just feel like moving, dancing, and you're just like in the flow of life.
Absolutely. It's like your turn on is not about your partner and about your relationship, although they can enjoy it over time, sure. But it's like your turn on is your health, is your juiciness, and like it's for you. So where can people find you and just like follow along and get help from you if they want?
Melissa Fraser Lifestyle, everywhere. Melissa Fraser Lifestyle on Facebook, Melissa Fraser Lifestyle on Instagram, melissafraserlifestyle.com is my website. So reach out. I got all kinds of fun tools.
I'll put all those links in the description below so you can find her. And I definitely recommend checking her out. Like I said at the beginning, she is my most trusted confidant. I call her for anyone, for everything. But specifically with health, I go to her with all health concerns for me, my partner, my daughter, my mother. Like, she is the root in our family. She's your mother.
She's my mother too.
Yeah. No, she's my mother. Okay, so one final question, just a total opinion piece. What do you believe when it comes to our sexuality? Do you feel like it's natural in terms of like some people are like naturally more turned on, and other people like they're just not really sexual type people, or is it something you can like foster and grow, or like is it natural, or what when we talk about nature
like
versus nurture?
Yeah. Well, I think a bit of both. Like I think certainly we're all different. You know, we just like we look different. We are different. We're different on every level. So everyone's libido is not going to be exactly the same, I don't think, necessarily. But I do think that everyone has the capacity to be really juicy and to be turned on and to be multi-orgasmic if they choose. You know, I feel like there's such a disconnect with like just like natural turn on, maybe is the word, in the sense, because we're just inundated with like porn culture, porn and toys, and not that toys are bad, not that porn is inherently bad, but it can create a bit of a dysfunctional, I don't know, like a dysfunctional view of turn on and sexuality
from our nature. Like, you know, it's like thinking even about like way back in our like ancestors, like, you know, what were they doing with their turn on? Like they weren't watching porn. They weren't. I don't know if they had toys like wooden. I don't know what they had, but
like oh, cucumbers are growing. Yeah. So like. And also, like, there's nothing wrong with using toys. You know, I think they're they can be a great addition. Yeah. But some people might feel inadequate.
I'm stuck on the keyboard.
Okay. Some people might feel inadequate. Like, I've heard women say, like, oh, well, like, you know, they feel inadequate because they've never had an orgasm with a penis inside them. They've had they always have to have a toy. Like, they always have to have a vibrator, and they've only had clitoral orgasms with a vibrator. Right. And so they feel like, well, I can't have this, so I'm, you know, like, oh, I could never be multi-orgasmic, or I could never have a vaginal orgasm because I never have. Yeah. So I think just because we never have something, or we have never had something, doesn't mean that we can't have it. You know, I think there's a lot of room for just exploration and like, you know, learning more about ourselves and letting ourselves just like grow and explore. And so, yeah, I think we can grow into those things. And, you know, as we learn more about ourselves and as we get healthier, like everything will change, including your sexuality. And
just not even comparing your sexuality to
other people.
It's like,
exactly.
It's your juiciness,
and not
your
looking
vitality.
And not looking at like speaking of porn, like even if women aren't watching porn, aren't watching it on a regular basis, but
it's still the program.
They see this video, and this woman's like, you know, rubbing her clit super hard, and then has this crazy orgasm, and the woman who's watching might be like, well, I don't even like that kind of sensation. Like,
right,
I could never do that or have that. And
hey,
that woman's acting. Yeah, she probably didn't even have an orgasm. Like, yeah,
true.
Anyways, so just like recognizing, like, just because. Learning to feel your own feelings and even if you don't want even nothing to do with porn, but like even just on TV and shows, like what we see is like the way
for sure
that to be sexy and the way to you know, be sexual.
For sure.
You know, we've a lot of these things are learned or taught to us through these avenues. And even more so, I think, with the generation that's coming up now, you know, like they can Google everything and anything, and you know, that's where they're learning, and it's a little bit scary. That's where they're learning about what they're supposed to be sexually. Right. That's what they're learning.
What their sexuality means, for sure.
Yeah. So
okay, well, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much for being here, and check out the show notes, and all her information will be there. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll direct her attention to anyone.
I'm in the group
that she needs to answer, and I'll make sure that she sees them, and maybe we'll do another episode for you. Okay, have a good day. Okay, these conversations are just the beginning, and they are a really great starting place, but if you want more tools, more action, more like specific things, and the accountability to implement them into your life, your sexuality, and your relationship, you've got to join the Rated R Love Club. On top of the challenges and action-based activity, what you're also going to get is coaching from me every single month, anonymous coaching from me. as well as behind the scenes where I share with you a little bit more in depth my process, like what's going on in my sexuality, my relationships, the things I'm not telling anybody else, things I might have only told her. So I will share those.
I'll never tell.
I'll share those with you inside of the community. And then you have the community as well. It's a completely private, anonymous community. If you don't want to be known, you do not have to be known. And if you want to participate, you can. So you cannot get in right now. The doors are closed, and I only open a few times a year. So go to the link in the comments below, in the description below, and get on the wait list. I only open the door a couple times a year, and it's only for a hot minute. So you've got to get in while it's open, because for the most part it's closed, so I can just stay in supporting our members. But that's really the place to be if you want more. That is called the Rated R Love Club, and you can go into the show notes to grab the link.